Hello, my friend. So after my last video, I started to question whether or not I actually knew what I should be doing with the stats or which weapons they were even good for. So I took a little bit of time and I wrote a couple of these down and kind of sorted them out so you guys have a better idea as to which one you should focus on and kind of why as well. But this isn't anything technical. I don't have any major numbers, just the general gist that I learned from perusing their multitude of guides that they had. Attack is going to be good for all weapons. It just increases your raw damage, whether that be damage you hit multiple times or a single. More attack equals more damage, so it's always good to have. Armor pierce. It's good for all, but it is better for quick attacking weapons. This is mostly because it will increase the damage like by a percentage of each hit versus your larger weapons where it's only decreasing the armor by that percentage each hit. So much like the next one, it can double dip with these multi-hit weapons and end up providing far more damage to those than the large two-handers. But they are mostly vital for just about everything. So every single weapon will have both attack and armor pierce on it. I believe there are some exceptions to this, but those are the baseline stats. Bonus damage. It is the best stat for multi-hit weapons. More hits means it gets to double dip or triple dip or quadruple dip into this number. Something like a royal sword gets a huge benefit from this. It is, however, very bad for the slower weapons. So if you see a bunch of bonus damage on your gear and you're sitting here using a two-handed greatsword or even the axe to some degree, you would be better off with that in just flat out attack or in some armor pierce. Crit. It does not work with expos. They operate on a weakness mechanic, which I'll touch on here in a moment. It is great for just about anything else, but do keep in mind, crits operate on a fixed set of combo points. So at 7 and 10 and other increments above that, you will get a guaranteed crit. The crit rating itself increases the chance of that happening outside of that. There are also other stats aside from these primary ones we're going to cover. Things like armor pierce percentage or crit percentage that increase your overall damage. Those can be very strong, but they're very situational in their use. Weakness. This one only works with the expos. It increases damage to weak points, obviously. The best stat for expos, if you can hit your shots. All other stats except for crit do still apply to your expos, so keep in mind that if you are feeling like your expo hits for next to nothing, some armor pin might be the way to go. There are a few other stats that you can worry about if you would like to. Things like defense, health, well, HP, and a few of the other like damage resistance and bonuses. They kind of all intertwine with one another. But if you're worried about your health or your defenses while you're trying to gear up your weapon, you're not actually doing it all that well. It's fine to have these kind of stats on your weapons, but you should really be gunning for as much offensive as you can. Almost every single one of these stats can appear on any given gear, so be sure you're aware of what you're adding before you go and add it. Having a bunch of crits great, but if your primary damage is exposed, that might not be best. On the flip side, if you have something like a Pipa, which goes ahead and bypasses all defenses, stacking additional armor pierce on top of the passive that you get is probably also not a great thing. As for the stat, no one seems to understand how it works. Resilience lessens the amount of critical damage you take from opponents, more so from monsters. There is a specific stat for reducing PvP damage, so I don't think it would interact with the way people crit you, but I don't know. Maybe high resilience means those crits aren't nearly as impactful, but resilience is different from defense, so make sure you are aware of how much of your defensive budget, quote unquote, goes into resilience versus like defense. As I said in my other video, the two highest power stats are crit and resilience. And they are two of the lowest ones that I have, but it is because each point of crit and each point of resilience is worth 5 power versus each point of attack is worth a lot less. And that's okay, because as they stand, most of the stats you'll see on those weapons with crit is going to have a lower number than say armor pierce or attack, as you can see on this weapon right here. This crit is at 67 and the attack is at 151. They are the same tier of rolled stats. So Even though this crit is worth 5 and this attack is worth 2 point some odd amount, it just makes it harder to decide which one you should put on it. So be mindful. If you're using things like the bow, it does gain extra damage from bonus damage. It will also, oh god, don't look at the melee damage increase I have on my bow. It's terrible. But you see what I mean? If you're cognizant of these things and you take your time to look and think about what kind of stats you should have on any given piece of armor or weapon, you can really level up your power game. I spoke about this in the other video, but having things like bonus damage is great. But if you're spending a lot of your time using an Unsoul Heavy Sword, like I am, it's not going to be great. But if you look at my Unsoul Heavy Sword, these stats are wonderful for it. Armor Pierce 115, 114, I can read, I swear. Crit 67, attack is a purple roll of 162. Melee damage increase is 3.25, so I have a flat out damage increase on it. It can make a world of difference if you have something like a large chunk of armor pierce on one of your melee weapons to try to get through that thick armor of those noble beasts and grand beasts that you keep running into. And I assure you, as you go up the ladder, there's going to be more and more and more and more armor. Most of that is because a tier 10 typically has 84 armor pierce, but a tier 11 has 111. So each time you go up a tier, it's a sizable jump. But I talked about all of that before. That's all I've got for today. I just wanted to kind of help point you guys in the right direction when you start actually gearing. Since I taught you how to gear, make sure you do it the right way. I am at currently a pretty respectable 27 power. Now I say respectable because most people are over 30k that I'm grouped with, and they'll frequently do more damage than me. However, I have not recently gone through and respect my gear so it's the proper stats. I think I'm gonna start doing that now that I understand what I'm looking for. I hope you do too. Have a wonderful day.